All right, good morning. Welcome back here to Trader Minute. Great to have you aboard. After a monster rally last night in S&P futures, market is set to open about 30 points higher, but the movement's been fairly interesting here, and we'll come back and take a look at it. But I want to start off by looking at uh, this idea of all this money being thrown at the system, which we've talked about this week, where central banks, governments just, open the spigots, get all this money into the system. And, naturally, the first impression is to think about inflation. Well, if there's all this money in the system, what about inflation? What about, what does that do to, the overall economy from an inflationary standpoint? And couldn't that be worse than what we're going through now? And the answer is yeah, it could, right? It could turn things into or into inflation, and that was one of the things back in the Great Depression that people were worried about, that it would lead to inflation, so they tightened money supply. One of the legacies of Ben Bernanke, Fed chairman during the financial crisis, was this idea that you meet financial crises on with money. You throw it into the system to avoid the biggest danger to an economy, which is deflation. And so when you throw all this money in the economy, yeah, there's an inflationary risk, but they're throwing it in there because they have to combat deflation. Deflation is the killer. Deflation is what you just can't really change too much. Inflation you can handle a little bit. Inflation tends to go with economic growth, and as long as inflation is going with economic growth, it is viewed by many as positive. This morning we had the German PPI number, a producer price index, which is one measure of inflation, and this is for February. And take a look. It came in at minus 0.4%. Year over year, minus 0.1%. When you have an economic shock to the system, you get deflation. You get prices across the board lowering. Now, it's not for everything. I mean, here in the U.S., you want some Clorox wipes, you can pay a little extra, right? They're those types of things. But in general, we are seeing prices of most things come on down, and that's very normal in some sort of economic shock. And that is why money thrown at the system doesn't create that hyperinflation for most economies. It is something that is being used to combat what we're starting to see in the inflation data, or the pricing data here, which is what the deflationary shock that coronavirus has sent across the world here. So I just wanted to show that number here this morning. Also, hope you and your families are doing well. Things changing for many people around the world, including myself. And we have different law changes every once in a while, or every little bit, as the coronavirus takes its toll in a little bit of a different way. Everywhere. It's one of those where I think last night we were told here in Utah that it's illegal to have a gathering over 10 people. I know some areas are basically quarantined to the houses with only, medical and grocery stores open. So, please stay safe, and, hope all is well, and hope this time passes, and we can get things back to a little more semblance of normality. Speaking of normality, the market is not anywhere close to back to normality. We had an absolute monster rally last night. S&P futures, this is after the market closed. S&P futures sitting here at 2340. They rallied at 2499, almost 2500. This is a 170-point rally in a matter of hours here in S&P futures. 170-point rally. It's just a monster number. It's just a monster swing. Now, in the last 2 hours, we've seen the market go from 2,500 almost to 2,400. It's at 2,410, so we've seen a 90-point pullback. We have seen more rise and fall in the market overnight than what we saw most months last year. We went through months of, what's going on with China and the U.S. and trade without seeing this much movement in the market. The movement continues to be super intense. The spreads continue to be pretty wide. The price stability very low with things overall. And no signs of that letting up here just yet. We did see, the VIX yesterday finally have some pullback in it to where it dipped down to 63. Went from 84 down to 63 overnight. We're seeing it kind of pop back up a little bit here this morning, back around 70. But yesterday is one of the first days where we really saw the VIX, bleed on down. We saw the VXX bleed on down here. VXX going from 76 down to 55. I mean, just a monster move here with it. And, that stuff isn't changing. And we've talked about what monster moves mean in the market. Monster moves typically do not give investors confidence, and while we continue to have massive swings, path of least resistance tends to be lower until we get that move where the metrics shift, where we start to see the control of the market shift here. And we haven't seen that yet. Yesterday, we did see a few pockets of life, a few signs of life sneak in. We talked about things like Amazon, where some of that pocket of life was sneaking in. Look at the volumes on Amazon. In fact, let me take off all the other indicators, and let me just show you what the volumes have been here for Amazon over the course of this 3-day rally. Look at these volumes. These are massive volumes to the upside. It's common to get massive volumes to the upside on earnings or to get massive volumes on the downside on a drop. Less common to see massive volume to the upside. It tells you, and we can see this in a few other areas, where the investors are going that look at this and say, okay, this is a shock. This is giving some buying opportunity for the long term, for that long haul. And, they're buying, but it's nothing stable, right? You can buy and you're in at 1920 and you wake up and it's down at 1880, right? You can wake up a little later, it's down to 1740. There's still going to be some real price instability, but there's some monster buying coming into a few areas. We talked about those yesterday. Amazon was one of them. And that is one of the changes that we saw yesterday. Another change that we saw yesterday come into play is we saw more stocks push above the 7-day moving average. We had 27 stocks on the S&P 500 break back above their 7-day moving average, and it wasn't just one sector. It was a whole bunch of different sectors out there, from your Adobes to your CSXs, which is a railroad, FedEx, EOG Resources, retailers like Nordstrom, Tiffany here. So a very kind of broad base to that, which is something we tend to see around, around areas of bottoming. We're getting overall more stocks trading above the 7. We're up to about 12.5% of the stocks in the market trading above their 7 here, which is a very low number. It's an extremely low number, but it's a huge improvement on a percentage basis from what has been here in the market of late. And once again, it's kind of broad-based around various sectors. Triple M This stock was bleeding before the whole, Corona crisis here, and really kind of shaping up over the last several days and outperforming a little bit here this week. So we're starting to see a few changes, a few, signs of green shoots coming in for the market and for the price action. But we do not have anything confirmed as far as, hey, you know what? Things are bullish now. But you can take a look. The market is traded at this around these prices now. This is going to be the fifth day. This is going to be day 5 where the same prices are hit 5 days in a row. We haven't had that throughout this entire slide. We've been shifting the range, shifting the range. Now, even though the range is pretty hefty, we are starting to see some stabilization in that range. And if we bring up S&P futures and I back this out to a 5-minute, here chart, we can see what the price action's been all week. And here we are. The futures are sitting where they were halted basically Tuesday night, Wednesday morning. Futures are sitting at that level. And we've traded about 150 points above that level this week. And we've traded about 150 points below that level this week. So, about a 300-point range. We're right smack dab in the middle of that. This today's action, is it going to be important? Yeah. Is it going to be game-changing? Is it going to be the type of action where you go, well, if the bears sell this action, then we're going lower. If the bulls buy this action, then we're going higher? Probably not. Probably not. It's probably not action that we'll be able to extrapolate past today in terms of its implications here overall. But, continues to be a very fluid situation. I'll jump on video here a little later this afternoon, probably around 1 o'clock Eastern time, unless we're starting to see some signals emerge. If we start to see some signals emerge, I'll wait until the normal trade time there. But the recordings will be posted. You can check them out at your own leisure there. And, again, wishing you all the best, and we'll talk to you later. Take care.